to Marvel Media Podcast, where we talk about all things media, especially Marvel. I'm Blake, and I'm here with my co-host, Alex.
And welcome to episode 3 of Marvel Talk. Today we will be discussing episode 4 of Hawkeye, which dropped on Disney Plus earlier today. So let's get right into it, shall we?
So, obviously, we're talking about episode 4 of Hawkeye. If you haven't seen it, you don't want any spoilers, just, leave a like, come back to this. But overall, I think just kind of both give our thoughts on the show. Once again, I think Marvel knocked this one out of the park. I thought episode 3 of Hawkeye was arguably one of the best episodes of any of the TV series so far from Marvel. And I think episode 4 pretty much lived up to that. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I think it definitely builds upon episode 3, but it's not as good as episode 4. Or, no, vice versa. It's not as good as episode 3. It's getting there, but I think I would still put episode 3 right above episode 4. Just a smidge. What did I forgot what I rated it.
I kind of understand that. I can see what you mean. I don't know, for some reason, maybe it's just recency bias because I just watched it, so it might just be like episode 4 I think is better, but I really liked episode 4. I think once again we got a good balance of some action, building more on storylines, and some serious parts, once again, just all kind of meshed in together in a really good way. So I really liked episode 4, and obviously you're not saying you don't like it, but I just thought really highly of it.
And that's fine. I mean, you can have your opinion, I can have mine. And I think that's probably it is that case where it's, you just watched and you feel like you're still running on that energy of like, damn, that was so good. But if I would rate it, I think just based off my memory, I think I had episode 3 as like a 9 out of 10. I think I'm gonna have this one as like an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
So it's still a really good episode. It's still better than the first two.
Pretty fair.
It's still better than the first two, for me.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think anybody would. Pretty much everyone probably would agree with that. Episode 1 and 2 were okay, but now we're starting to get into the real important parts, I would say, of the whole show. But let's just pretty much talk right where the episode picks up. We see Jack have the Ronin stored up to Clint's throat. Eleanor comes around the corner like, oh, wow, Avenger, everything's all cool. They kind of talk for a little bit at the table, and you kind of see once again Kate being like, oh, this is Avengers level threat, and me and Clint are partners on this, and we're also like best friends now. And Clint once again is like, yeah, we're working together on this, I guess.
Yeah, but you're not like my partner.
But then you see Eleanor says, so Kate's helping you with an Avengers level threat? And you kind of the camera goes to Jeremy Renner, and he kind of just like sits there and just like thinks about it. And then he's like, yeah, we're partners, I guess, just to kind of get them out of the situation. And you see Kate's face, and she's smiling and all happy about it. So, I mean, I think it stinks because I feel like we're not going to get it again after this series. But I think Clint and Kate's relationship is so much fun on screen.
It is.
Like, it's so much fun to me.
It definitely is. And it definitely has that, like, buddy cop, learning from the master. And it's always fun to see, like, even like for Clint's case, he's done it for so long. He knows how to do everything. I think, and in the mission to retrieve that watch, I mean, you can just see the differences between them. But also at the same time, you can see where something could potentially, go. So like with Kate's story, it can eventually develop into something similar to Clint's way of doing things, but definitely have her own spin on it, which is also really fun to watch as well. But yeah, it's definitely like comparing and contrasting two different sides of a coin when it comes to those two, but it works really well. Definitely, I hope this isn't the last time as well, because it's definitely one of the highlights of the show so far.
Oh, absolutely. So from that scene we talked about, they were all talking, and then Eleanor says like, "Oh, can I walk you out to Hawkeye. Clint kind of eyes the sword. We see later in the scene he ends up getting the sword somehow. But as they're at the elevator, Eleanor kind of goes into saying how, she's lost somebody before, Kate's not this superhero. And then she also, I don't know I felt about how she said, like, oh, I know you've lost people before. Like, do you have a family? I know you've lost people before. Like, Nat was really good, but as you saw, like, being really good or being really lucky or something like that doesn't always work out. She said something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Which, in that scene, I sort of, for once, kind of saw Eleanor actually having a little bit of, like, a motherly love, in a way. Because I feel like for most of the show, she's kind of been a little bit colder to Kate, kind of either in, like, this is the plan you're going to take. Either we didn't know if it was to protect her, to kind of keep her in the dark on Eleanor's kind of mysterious past or whatever she's doing on the side. But for that scene, I actually for once kind of thought that Eleanor was actually showing a little bit of like motherly love, like watching over Kate and like caring about Kate.
Yeah, I definitely felt that too. It was I don't know. I'm pretty sure they did that on purpose. They definitely did that on purpose because other than maybe the very first scene when she's like kind of like playing with food with her, and this was back when she was younger. Other than that, yeah, she's definitely been kind of. I don't want to use the word cold, but she's been kind of, just she acknowledges that Kate's there, but then she kind of just does her own thing. So, in a way, it's kind of like ignoring slash, just being kind of in her own world. She doesn't really take in Kate's word for pretty much anything. She doesn't take it seriously until serious shit goes down, and then that's when she's like, okay, now it's time to like really be serious about it and start to actually pay attention. And I think she realized that as soon as she saw Clint in her little mansion thing. And she's like, yeah, no, this is bad news because I can't afford to lose another person. Now it could all be a ruse, and it could be all where she didn't really lose her husband. She actually either killed him or she was in on something. We still don't know that yet. But as of right now, we're gonna take it as it is and say, yeah, then she has lost him, and she doesn't feel like wanting to lose the only other person in her life, other than Jack. But Jack's just recently been introduced into her life, so it's not, or at least that we know of course. For all we know, this could be going on for quite a while. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree. It's the first time where we see her actually being kind of a mom, and actually thinking about her daughter before herself, for sure.
Right. Yeah, actually showing a little bit of care for Kate in a way. Also, around that scene, we also had Kate was using Eleanor's computer at the end of the last episode, and then Eleanor mentions again, like, oh, somebody tried to use my login, blah, blah, and then she walked away and she made a phone call, and the person didn't answer. She just said, hey, it's Eleanor. Call me back. It's urgent. I mean, we would assume, at least what my thoughts are, probably yours, she's probably calling Kingpin in that moment, as who I would guess. I don't know, is that who you were thinking, or do you think she was calling someone else?
That's the easy guess, but I would say it's definitely the big bad. It's definitely the big boss, where Eleanor finally finds out that who has been trying to get some information, and then as soon as she finds out that it's her own daughter and an Avenger, she then's like, okay, yeah, this is kind of urgent. I should probably call the big boss and let him know, or let her know, who we still don't know who it is, what's going on, because this could be a really big issue moving forward.
Right. I mean, that's true. It may not be Kingpin because we don't know who. Obviously, we don't know who the big bad is. And, we're both on board Kingpin showing up at some point here. But we don't know if that's more of, like, Eleanor's connection, or if that's more of, like, a Jack Armand type connection. We don't know which of the two
Right.
is more connected to him. I mean, I guess now that I think about it, probably if anyone, it might be Jack more connected to Kingpin,
Right.
since we now know that Jack is somehow connected in either running the Tracksuit Mafia or he has some kind of relation to Kazi and Tracksuit Mafia.
Yep.
So, I mean, I guess potentially Jack could be the uncle of Echo and Kazi, and it's not Kingpin. Maybe it is Jack. It could be, potentially, but... So that is true that Kingpin's connection probably is a little bit leaned more towards the Jack Tracksuit Mafia, that kind of side of things, rather than Eleanor's.
Yep. And I think what they had said was that Jack was the CEO of Sloan Limited. I think that's what it was called. And so I think he's just going to be like the face of them, because it's essentially a shell company. So the shell company is essentially the Tracksuit Mafia. So he's probably just the face of them, and that's how he's been getting all of his money. But obviously there is someone above him.
Right. Yeah, he's not the whole head or brains of the whole thing.
He's more of the
very
face.
Clearly is. Right. Another thing that right after that scene where Clint gets off the elevator, he's walking, he calls Laura, and he says, "Oh, can you look into this guy for me a little bit?" And she says, like, "Oh, Sloan," all that stuff. And she also asks him in a different language about the watch or the Rolex, meaning, from at least what we haven't seen Clint mention that to her on screen. She asked him about it.
Mm-hmm.
So he said later on in the episode, the watch was, to Kate, he said the watch had some kind of connection to someone's identity that he knows. And if that watch gets into the wrong hands, they can like figure out the person's identity, something like that.
Yeah.
I would assume it doesn't have anything to do with Ronan, at least to me personally. I don't think this watch is like, somehow if you have the watch, you can figure out Ronan was Hawkeye Clint at that time. I'm kind of thinking that somehow this watch connects to Laura, and potentially before she was Laura Barton, she was working for S.H.I.E.L.D. or some other government agency as some kind of agent. Potentially in the comics, there's the superhero Mockingbird, who she originally was Barbara Morris or Bobby Morris, and potentially we could see somehow she was this character. She got out of that life, ended up marrying Clint because they both had that connection of both being, spies, secretive people. They can't have, normal lives.
Mm-hmm.
Which would make sense because, I mean, for a normal person, for Clint to meet a normal person and them being okay with like, oh yeah, my husband's an Avenger and like we have a secret family and we live off the radar from everyone. And she now knows, all of a sudden she knows like a different language, and she's so open to know all this stuff because at some point Clint had to fill her in on him being Ronin and the stuff he did.
Yeah.
Because she knew about, he mentioned the Tracksuit Mafia and she said something about like, not those idiots again. So potentially maybe she knew of the Tracksuit Mafia, not from Clint telling her stories from when he was Ronin, but maybe she personally dealt with the Tracksuit Mafia while she was the Mockingbird. And so now whoever the leader is, whether it's Kingpin or someone else, is also trying to get revenge on the Mockingbird. Potentially she did some stuff. So that's kind of my thoughts with that whole thing. I don't know what your kind of opinion or take on that is.
I mean, it could be. It's the easiest explanation, and it kind of explains why she all of a sudden, for the first time, because I don't think she's ever spoken a different language
No.
in any of the other appearances that she's had in the MCU so far. She all of a sudden starts to speak a different language, and I don't know if it's Russian or whatever, because I didn't do the research on that, but
I'm not sure. To me, it sounded more of either some kind of like a Swedish or some kind of that type of, I don't know, language, something of that area. To me, it didn't sound like as much of like a Russian or like a German or anything like that. Mm-hmm. To me, it kind of sounded, I mean, I haven't done the research either. I could be completely wrong here. I'm not saying I'm, the most, I don't know every language and how it speaks, but to me, it sounded almost like kind of Swedish, that kind of area.
And it could be. I mean, we don't know because the MCU tends to kind of do its own thing. and they tend to do like their own spin on stuff. So anything's possible. I feel like that definitely is the easiest explanation. You know, Alora was also an agent of Shield or whatever other agency, and you know she's gotten on the nerves of a bunch of crime bosses, and now she has to, and then at some point she had to kind of go into hiding, and you know Clint also had to go into hiding at some point, and they met, or they've known each other since they first started, and you know that was an easy connection, boom, and now they are married and changed their name or whatever, and then now if any crime boss or the crime boss that you know is still yet to be revealed is trying to figure out who it is, and one of those clues is that watch, and if it traces back to Laura, you know that could be a potential big issue for not only her but I mean obviously Clint and the rest of their family, which is the big reason why Clint even has stuck around in New York, is to you know kind of end it there and not have this constantly come back and reoccur. So yeah, I think that's going to be his main goal now, is just to retrieve that and kind of just finish it.
Right. No, that I mean, it definitely makes sense that as of now he does have both the Ronin suit and the Ronin sword, so he's collected both the things of the Ronin. So now it's kind of just putting the issue away. He doesn't have to retrieve that stuff, just kind of making sure he takes care of the tracksuit mafia, whether that's taking them down or somehow getting his way to talk to whoever the main head of it is, whether it is Kingpin or someone else, and explaining like, hey, this wasn't Kate Bishop, leave this girl alone. And whether he says like it was me or just something else, just to try to get them off of Kate's back so that he doesn't have to worry about her, and then he can get out of town and not have to worry about his actions hurting anyone else that didn't have anything to do with it. So I think kind of the after that we saw Jack and Eleanor have like, I guess you say, a bit of a whole family moment with Kate as well, when they were all sitting there and they were talking, and then Jack and Eleanor danced a little bit and Kate looked like she was actually enjoying it, or she smiled and was kind of having fun. And then they brought up how Jack will use like those little sayings and he'll say them incorrectly and they'll joke around, and they kind of had like a little family bonding for once. It almost looked like, you know, Kate kind of let her guard down a little bit on the Jack hate or the Jack conspiracies, and then they bring up like, oh, being with family is, you know, so important around this time. So then Kate gets the idea to go back to Hawkeye and bring the family movies and put up a tree and all that stuff. And a thing that happened during that, before it got to the harder topic and the deeper conversation, is I want to mention the whole throwing, I guess it wasn't quarters to start. Clint found something on the tree and he snapped it and hit the whatever, and then he was kind of teaching Kate that in the comics, Clint has a brother who, Barney Barton, who I believe his hero is like Trick Shot or something like that. He basically is similar to Hawkeye, you know, doesn't have superpowers to say. He's just kind of like an agent who's very talented. And in the comics, there's actually Barney and Clint teach one another like how to do that with the snapping of the quarters. And then here we saw that kind of switched around a little bit, where Clint was showing Kate. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they found a way. I mean, who knows, the way Marvel is, potentially somehow Barney Barton is a thing we don't know about yet, and that'll show up later on or something. But I doubt it. But, you know.
You never know.
Who knows? You never know what Marvel's up to. But I thought that was cool that they still found a way to kind of get that part of a comic involved in this, just in a little bit different fashion of someone different. And so I thought that was kind of cool that Marvel, you know, being Marvel, they find a way to get a bunch of different storylines or things from comics involved.
Yeah, they are notorious for placing Easter eggs of all different kinds, even in movies that, you know, don't really make any sense. But, you know, even if it's just like the tiniest thing in the background, you know, I guess they just excel at that. And in this case, they take a little, you would think, an insignificant part of a comic, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just, you know, two brothers teaching each other how to snap a coin and hit something, you know, right on the dot. and they use that and they flip it around, you know, to have that little kind of connection between Clint and Kate, you know, to kind of, you know, move the mentorship further and further along. You know, you can see them kind of grow between these first 4 episodes. That it went from like absolutely not wanting to do anything with you to like, okay, you know, you kind of need my help, so I'm gonna stick around. And then now where he's actually kind of worried about, you know, having her around and what that would mean in terms of, because you saw it towards the end of the episode, and we'll get to that later on, but you saw it especially in that one shot where he kind of realizes that, man, this is tough now, since, you know, I've lost my best friend, that being Nat, and if he were to kind of, you know, gain another friend and that also happens to help him out in the same line of work, you know, what that means, um, you know, about having her around him. And you can definitely see that, you know, starting to kind of haunt him, and actually, you know, it's starting to kind of develop into him actually starting to care about Kate, and, you know, not wanting to put her in harm's way. So yeah, and that's just only in 4 episodes. Like, this isn't like a full-on Netflix show that have like 13 episodes, and, you know, you can really go on. But, you know, it's still nice to see, you know, them start to kind of develop, and yeah, I feel like we're gonna get a full-fledged duo by the end of it, which is in about 2 weeks. So yeah, because
Right. I mean, this has been taking place over what, probably 4 or 5 days.
mm-hmm.
The show has taken place over, so you've kind of seen pretty quickly. I mean, right off the bat, Kate was very much like, "Oh, you're Hawkeye. Like, I'm, you know, a huge fan." She was very much a fan of his and friendly and wanting to be friends. And we kind of saw a little bit towards the middle of the episode, Clint definitely seemed to open up to her a little bit more and be willing to kind of accept her a little bit more as like a friend or a mentee type role. But then at the end of the episode, like you mentioned, we'll get to, he kind of then basically just kicks her out and is like, yeah, no, this isn't, get out of here. Um, so another thing that at the end of that, the whole, you know, Christmas night where she brought over everything and they did the quarter throwing. At the end of that, we got a little bit more serious again in terms of, she asked like, "Oh, what was your best shot?" or something like that, and he was like, "Oh, it was, my best shot was one I didn't take." And they kind of had that back and forth of her like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to tell you." And she's like, "It'll be a great story. This is so fun, haha." And then all of a sudden he's like, "Well, it's not fun because I was supposed to, you know, take out Nat, but I didn't." And then, you know, we ended up becoming friends, and then I had to be there to watch her die. And that's been a huge issue or reoccurring theme of this show, is how much of a toll losing Nat has taken on Clint. And so we got that serious part again of him realizing that, or us realizing again how serious that this is on Clint and how much it affects him. And right before he goes to bed, he basically, almost in a way, has like PTSD flashbacks of things that happened with Nat, ending with what we saw in Endgame right before her saying, you know, "Let me go," and her falling. So once again, the show is just, it, to me, it's showing the range that Marvel can do in a small thing.
Right.
Because, I mean, we've seen movies, obviously. In a 2 hour, 2.5 hour movie, you can have, you know, backstory, this, all that stuff, you know, conflict, all that. But we're seeing in just these short, what, this episode was probably 50-ish minutes, somewhere around there. Once again, we had some action, we had some having fun, some lightheartedness, and then again, we also saw that serious and kind of showing the actual effects that it takes on, you know, these superheroes, that, you know, people like Clint that are just actual people, how much it affects them. So I really liked once again, we got that deeper part of the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It definitely grounds the characters, and, you know, makes them more believable than, you know, obviously just people running around in costumes shooting aliens with a bow and arrow. But
No, absolutely.
you know, it definitely gives them, you know, a space to kind of ground the character, and in a way also kind of tie things together, which obviously Marvel excels at. They excel at that. They plant seeds in one movie, and then it could be brought up in a show now because since they've moved to Disney Plus, they've had this other entirely different way of basically telling stories, and which in a way I think it's definitely benefited them a lot. Because I don't think just purely trying to put this into like the minds of movie executives, I don't think they would have ever actually greenlit a Hawkeye movie. But when it comes to a show, they're like, okay, yeah, I mean, let's go for it. I mean, it's huge opportunity to really build a whole broader world. We've met all these characters, and now we really get to do all this world building around each one. I mean, in most of the Avengers cases, they've had their own movies. Black Widow only had one, but I mean that her story was kind of told throughout the whole timeline from start to her end in Endgame. But I think it was definitely a good idea to really give all these characters like Loki, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and now Hawkeye their own shows. It really kind of expands on what has already been told to us and really dives deeper into their psyche. Honestly, I think every single show has kind of had some depressing moments in them. I mean, you really see their the darker side of all of these characters and the stuff that they've been through, and in some cases the stuff that they never went through but they've seen, and that kind of changes their character up, and it really kind of keeps things fresh. You know what I mean? It's not kind of like recycled. It's
Right.
they're really stretching things out and bringing new things to the table. So to make some shows for this platform, and it really expands on what they've already done really well in the past 10 plus years, making this 20 something movies. I think
they're like 23 or 24 they're up to, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's a really good point. That I don't know how well a Hawkeye movie would have been greenlit to actually happen, but like you said, with doing these shows, it definitely gives us a lot more time for them to develop the characters. Because if you think about it, I mean, Hawkeye, the TV series, is, you're looking at close to an hour per episode, 6-ish episodes, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at a little under 6 hours. Obviously, you can't make a movie 6 hours long. No. Nobody's going to go watch that. I mean, as much as everyone, or not everyone, but Scorsese wants to make The Irishman 4 hours long and complain that people don't want to go to theaters to watch that for some reason, because somehow that connects to superheroes. It's Marvel's fault that people don't want to go watch those movies. Ridley Scott, all you directors, you're wrong. No one wants to sit to watch your 4 hour long movies that suck. But moving on, you can't make a 6 hour long movie, and obviously Hawkeye, as much as it is close to 6 hours of Hawkeye, the show, it's obviously not all just Hawkeye the entire time. You get different backstories, different people being added in, but it gives them a lot more time to develop the characters in a lot more intricate way that we also get to kind of feel for them more than just in a movie. Because you can't... Obviously, there are some movies, but it's hard in a movie to build and show as much as we've, I don't know about you, we haven't talked about this too much, but in WandaVision, when they showed the flashback of everything that happened with Wanda and her going to the house that Vision bought for her, and then that was going to be like their house to grow old in, basically, and then from there she had her collapse and she screamed, and then that's how everything happened. To me, that whole episode was so emotional, and I don't think in a movie they could have included all that to get us to feel for Wanda as much as they did.
Oh no, absolutely. And I don't think it would have worked, because I feel like just if you were to pluck that scene and try to put it into a movie, and obviously the best movie to actually have included it in would have been probably Endgame. And despite the 3 hour long runtime, so say the actual time that the movie took to build its story and everything was not a factor. But just thinking about it, it's like, okay, so in this movie we've had Nat die, we've had Tony die, we've had the Tony funeral scene, then we get like the brief talk with Clint and Wanda about Nat and Vision, and then probably the best place to put it would probably be right after that. But even then, it's like you have the whole Thor and Guardians thing, and like as it was, I would say that ending kind of dragged on just a tad bit too much.
Yeah, right.
But say just for the hell of it that they would have wanted to shoehorn that in, we still were we were still feeling and processing what had happened prior, which was the whole snap. So, and like I said earlier, I don't think a Wanda movie would have been greenlit anyways. Or I mean, I could be completely different, like wrong.
I mean, at this point, after WandaVision TV series, obviously
for sure. Would. Yeah, no.
But at that time, I definitely agree with you. Yeah. I don't know if straight out of Endgame we could have just been like, oh, Wanda's getting her own movie. I mean, definitely, again, it has Marvel attached to it. We all love Marvel. Wanda, I think a lot of people would have said she was very slept on character after WandaVision. There's a whole lot of us that are huge Wanda fans. But I definitely agree with you. If we didn't get WandaVision and it was just a movie, who knows how well that would have done.
Exactly. And like I said, I mean, for that show, I think it was 9 episodes, but they weren't as long. But even then, I think it was close to around 6 hours or so. And you can't fit
it honestly was
all
probably
of that
a little
into
bit
a
more.
movie.
It probably was a little bit more than 6 hours total of runtime.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, and I mean, that scene also hit us harder because we had seen so much stuff before it. If they would have just taken, saying just that one scene and put it at the end of Endgame, like you said, just threw it in there, it still would have had some impact, but it would have had nowhere near the impact it did in WandaVision. Because for the past, at that point, almost 2 months, we had been every single week tuning in to watch WandaVision and gotten so much of this elaborate backstory. And we had the whole scene where Agatha took her to Vision and her talking, and you had that whole, what is grief if not love persevering line, and you just saw a lot more. And then add that scene on top, it just hit way harder. That just that scene alone would not have done as good. And in a movie, there's no way they got as much as they got in WandaVision.
Right, exactly.
To give us that impact. So,
and
I definitely agree with you. The whole movie concept or a whole movie series, a TV series that's whatever. I definitely agree this has been a great idea for Marvel to give us more time to get more depth and backstory on characters.
And not just any characters, because think about it. Falcon, Winter Soldier, other than the movie that he had with Cap. Who else?
Loki.
And now Clint. They were all like background or secondary characters for the most part throughout pretty much all of the movies, right? Other than
they almost weren't even the villain. Background.
Yeah, they weren't the leads of the movie, right? It's always been RDJ, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans as like the 3 main ones that they're always highlighted in the movies, and then the main villain, and that was probably the only time that I guess Tom Hiddleston was also kind of highlighted after his good performance as Loki in the first Avengers movie. Then he started to kind of get more screen time after that in Thor: Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok, but
Thor: Dark World he got a lot of screen time,
but it wasn't like
Thor: Dark
his story. It was always Thor's story,
right?
And how that involved Loki in it, not the other way around. And that's what we got in the Loki show. Same thing with Wanda. Right. Same thing with Vision. Vision really didn't get much of like an actual character development throughout the movies. We just kind of saw the progression of him going from literally born yesterday to him kind of learning to control his powers, to then him detecting Thanos coming, and then the stone was ripped out, then he died, and then okay, now we finally get to, you know, learn more about him in a different format. Sure, he's not the same one, but it's in the way that she created him. It's the way that she remembered him. So I guess it still kind of counts. Uh, but yeah, no, all these characters were just like
Honestly, that just made me
sidekicks.
remember the end of it. What is White Vision now? Like, we just have this White Vision that just flew away.
He's just chilling.
I mean, we don't have to. Yeah, we're not gonna bring that back up. We're talking about Hawkeye this one, but I just completely forgot about him for the past like. Honestly, we're almost to a year. It's almost been a year since WandaVision came out. Just completely forgot that there's just this whole weird Vision that someone knows he's Vision and all that flying around. But that's whatever. We'll get to that at some point. And then the big end to the Hawkeye episode was Kate goes in to get the watch. She finds the watch. She's like, oh, you know, something's going on. All of a sudden, Clint's fighting somebody. She's done fighting Echo. They get to the rooftop. We have the whole fight scene of Clint, Kate, Echo, this random, you know, person that just came out of nowhere with their things. Obviously, it ends up to be Yelena, as we all knew she would show up at some point in the show, the way Black Widow ended. But to me, in the fight scene, Yelena wasn't trying to kill Clint. It didn't seem like. She didn't really seem like she was really trying to kill anyone to me. Because, like, she threw Kate off the building, but she also attached her so that she wouldn't, you know, fall to her death. And at one point, Echo was kind of behind Clint, almost choking him in a way. And then Yelena punched her right in the face to get her off. And we never saw Yelena trying to kill anyone. So what are your kind of thoughts on what Yelena was doing there?
I don't think she was trying to kill him either. I think what she was trying to do was trying to capture him and to take him in to interrogate him and then ask him questions. And then after that, you know, whatever, say she still didn't believe him or whatever, then she probably would have killed him. But I don't think that's the way it's going to play out, because all she got was an iPad with his picture on it, and like, yeah, this is the guy responsible for killing your sister. And you know, I mean, I don't know, if I were to put myself in that position, I'd be like, okay, well then let me go and find him and ask him for myself, or like tie him up and beat him up a little bit, you know, tie him up and then just see like, okay, what the hell happened, and then after that, you know, then I can make my own judgment call on that. But yeah, I don't think she was trying to kill him either. I think what she was trying to do was capture him, and it just so happened that Kate and Maya were kind of in the way, and that's why she probably threw her off and just kind of tried to get her away so that it would give her enough time to tie him up and, I don't know, take him somewhere. Yeah, and that's probably why she
talked to him, right? Because
Echo right in the face. She's like, "Get the fuck off!"
Right, which was after she kind of shot the tasers onto Echo again, just trying to get her out of the way. Just because there was Kate and Echo, just try to get them out of the way so she can just take Hawkeye 1-to-1, take him out ideally, and either knock him out with some of that electric whatever, or however she has to get him to try to have a conversation is what I would assume was also her goal there. If she wanted to, I'm sure that could have been a bigger thing, a lot more violent thing, if she was actually just trying to, you know, just end this. He killed my sister. Right. I'm just going to kill him, move on. That was definitely not the feel of that.
And she had the chance to do it when both Echo and Kate were in the apartment, and all of a sudden right, exactly.
She snuck up on him.
If she wanted to kill him, she could have just been and dead. But no, that the clear wasn't the case. She actually wanted to capture him, and to do that, she kind of had to fight him first. But yeah, no, I definitely don't think she was trying to kill him. At least not right off the bat.
Which, no, I definitely agree. Which kind of leads me to, do you think Clint knew or does know that that was a Yelena who's Nat's sister? Or do you think at any point Nat and him shared that, or she's brought up that she has, this sister? Or do you think he has no idea? He just thinks that was some kind of... Because he probably doesn't even know that the whole Red Room has been taken care of.
I don't think he does.
I would assume.
I don't think he does. I don't think he would, because as soon as that ended, Infinity War happened, and he was on house arrest doing his own thing. Or him and Scott were just doing their own thing. So no,
Right.
I don't think he actually knows that, and that's probably why he was like, oh
Yeah,
shoot,
because we never saw
there's a
on
Black Widow
screen.
assassin here. It's like, yeah, no, I can't have you, you know, continue to help me.
Right. Yeah, we never saw on screen him. No, but I don't know if we could. I doubt we could just assume from this, or maybe they'll do a flashback, which I would be very surprised to see this. But maybe at some point on the whole trip to Vormir, when it was just Nat and Hawkeye flying to Vormir and doing that, at some point potentially, I guess if they really wanted to just kind of throw it in that he knows about her, Nat could say like, while they're flying in space, like, oh,
I
hey,
don't
by
think
the
so.
way, I took out the Red Room. Don't worry about it. It's all taken care of, which I highly doubt. But so I guess, yeah, we haven't seen it on screen, but I agree with you. I don't think
Mm-mm.
Clint knew that that is Yelena, or Yelena is Natalie's sister, or Nat's sister, and he doesn't know about the whole Red Room being taken down. So I'm sure we'll see that in the next episode, I would assume. I mean, we only have 2 more left, which is kind of crazy to think about, that we're already getting close to the
Exactly.
end of the Hawkeye show.
Yeah.
So I mean, in our thoughts, they have a pretty decent amount to still kind of get in here, because we still need to kind of figure out or tie the loose ends of this whole watch. Because as the episode ended, as far as we know,
Yeah.
Kate still
She
has
put
it,
it in
doesn't
her
she?
like pocket or something.
She put it in her pocket, and at no point in the fight did they ever, I guess no one pickpocketed her or anything. We never saw that, because so as far as we know, after the fight, Hawkeye, Clint and Kate had left on bad terms. Of Clint was saying like, yeah, you need to get out of here, kid. Like, there's now a Black Widow assassin here. This is very real. And they had that big, basically breakup scene of him like, no, you're not ready for this. But she still has the watch,
Mm-hmm.
which is important to Clint. So we still have that whole to tie up what's going on with that watch. We still potentially, we have the whole tie-in of Yelena and Hawkeye. I'm sure at some point they'll have some kind of conversation about Nat. We're assuming at some point here we're going to figure out the big bad is Kingpin or whoever it is. So there's still a pretty decent amount that needs to be tied up in these next 2 episodes.
Yeah,
in
and
my
I think
eyes.
they're definitely saving the bigger stuff for that last episode. If I had to guess, it'll probably be like a 48 to 50-ish minute episode next week, and then the last one will be probably like about an hour. If I had to guess.
Yeah.
But what I just found interesting during that last scene there before the episode wrapped up was, and it was kind of a callback to the conversation they had earlier, was that the best shot that I didn't take was, or the best shot that I had was the one that I didn't take. And then you saw Kate had the chance to, pretty much put Yelena down, and she didn't do it. So it's like, okay, so that's kind of alluding to potentially happening, where it's going to be like the new Hawkeye and the new Black Widow moving forward there. But I just thought that was a nice little callback to the conversation they had earlier.
Oh, I absolutely could see at the end of this Kate and Yelena having some kind of friendship, like them both, like you said, stepping into those new roles. Kate is Hawkeye now, or some variation of Hawkeye, and Yelena is now Black Widow and some kind of thing. I definitely could see, just from the on-screen time we saw of Yelena in Black Widow, I think everybody, she was so funny. Everybody had, anyone I've talked to thought she was great in that. And obviously, Kate has just been making the show so much fun with her whole personality and relationship. So 100% could see those two have some kind of friendship kind of in the future here. So yeah, I would definitely like to see that too. If we don't get to keep seeing Clint and Kate, I think a Kate and Yelena friendship would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then that last shot there before it ended, you kind of saw Clint kind of have PTSD again without actually having it cut back to it. But you saw Kate falling down, and he was like, and he started to kind of remember, it's like, nah, I can't have this happen again. So it's gonna be kind of kept being brought up, and yeah, that probably is what led to him being like, no, I can't go through this again. I can't afford to lose another friend. Yeah, so that probably one of the things that is going to be talked about in the next episode. So we'll see how that goes.
So I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. I mean, as we both said, Hawkeye episode 4, we both really liked it. Let us know in the comments down below if there's anything either we missed or we pointed out that you liked or anything like that. Also, you can follow Marvel Media Podcast. We now have social medias for that. So if you want to look on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, any of that stuff, we'll probably be a little bit more active talking about when we post and clips from the show. So go follow those if you want. Other than that, I think like and subscribe if you like the episode. And we'll see you guys next week talking about episode 5 of Hawkeye.
Peace.